The Effects of Acceleration in Advanced Learners by Emily Mason, Arkansas State University, Research in Early Childhood. The question I chose to ask was, how can I accelerate learning for accelerated students while providing grade-appropriate social and emotional interaction? I first looked at research to establish where the research lies and how the research was fitting to this topic. I also looked at how much research and how much knowledge and information was already out there. So the pros that I found, the first one was a study conducted by Maraka U.M. Goss. It took place over 20 years and focuses on the academic, social, and emotional development of students in Australia who had IQs of 160 or greater. At 5 years, 5 months, Roshini tested the 99th percentile for 7-year-olds on a standardized test of math achievement. Her school responded by accelerating her to 2nd grade. By 4th grade, at age 7.5, she was taking math with 6th grade students. She entered university at age 15. This is taken from Gross, the Gross study, which is cited at the end of this presentation. The second source took place in a Scandinavian country by Hugiven, Van Hel, and Verhoeven. They explored why teachers were not pursuing acceleration in their classroom. That's because 28.2% of teachers indicated they had had negative experiences with acceleration, but they could see that the positive part of this was that acceleration was working. So why was their negative experiences this low actually causing teachers to rebuke this cause and not pursue it any further? So the cons. Although the majority of studies find that acceleration does no harm in either the short or long term, few studies find results in the socio-affective advantage for gifted students. So if there's no results, then is it really benefiting anybody? Nyhart addressed the issue of acceleration by stating that he believes it does no harm nor good for gifted students. If these studies state that this is not truly benefiting gifted students, then why are we pushing our children to accelerate their learning? When we look at the issues through the eyes of a child, perfectionism is one that might be a point to consider when it comes to acceleration. Will students push themselves too hard or view themselves less as when it comes to earning a lower grade than they were used to in their previous class? Maybe they will become withdrawn or stressed. All of these are valid questions when we're looking at potential negative effects of acceleration. Also, parental expectations. How the parent views their child when they bring home a poor grade. Will parents continue to push their child to the same, maintain the same grades? Parental expectations are important when understanding why a child demonstrates specific behaviors. If a child sees their parents as too engaged or focused on grades, this can bring unwanted stress to the child to maintain a perfect image. If a parent is withdrawn and doesn't seem to see the grades at all, the child could potentially lose interest in trying because they do not see the reward or value in their efforts. And then their peers. They play an important role in the child's school success. A student has become accelerated might not physically fit in with their peers. They may not be ready maturity-wise, which can cause a child to feel left out. A student may also miss their peers and the relationships they had, causing them to miss out on the opportunities with their new peers. This next table was very interesting to me, and since we've explored both the pros and the cons, it showed me why this is not happening in America. According to Colangio, Asuline, and Gross from the University of Iowa, we focus too readily on age instead of looking at the ability of the child. When we look past whether the child is 8 or 9 years old, we might see that they have the ability of a higher performing student. We view acceleration as rushing children's childhoods away and that there will be gaps in their learning. We know from previous research that children were actually able to fill those gaps in themselves as they worked through problems, since higher order thinking was already a skill that they possessed. While acceleration is not common in American schools, I believe that we are demonstrating a form of acceleration with differentiation. We are building on previous knowledge and upping the rigor in order to meet the needs of our children, the same as lessening the skill or going back to the root of the skill and building upon that root in order to build a solid foundation. All differentiation does is give students the ability to learn at their own pace and at their own target range. I believe Kathy Hargrove addressed this wonderfully when she talked about the connection of No Child Left Behind, as many schools were inundated with demands to bring all children to the same level of learning, and we forgot about those needs of those that required acceleration. If we only focus on children who are deemed below grade level as being ones of importance, then the ones that are on or above grade level get the least amount of our time and attention. So when I looked at this assignment, my timeline may look very familiar to many of your timelines. During week 1, I will be doing a pre-assessment. This will be an observation of the student in an advanced classroom with their peers of a different age. The second pre-assessment will be focused on skills from 3rd to 5th grade to determine appropriate mathematical levels to start the child on. This is just an example of what my research may look like, as I am hoping to get into a 3rd to 5th grade classroom to do this. But as we all know, this may change and I may be in a lower classroom, which is perfectly fine. But I still plan on using the observation and then pulling skills from the appropriate level and the appropriate standards in order to determine whether the child is on grade level, above grade level, or in need of support. I'll also be looking at their social and emotional interactions using a checklist and annotated notes during this time. During week 2, I will analyze and assess and look at pre-assessments, look at test scores in order to identify areas of greatest need. We will start to integrate the child into the classroom during this first week as a slow process, possibly a half an hour or so at a time during what we have as our RTI time. That's an intervention time, and this counts as an intervention. And so observing this child in a different classroom for 30 to 40 minutes at a time is a great way to start. I will meet with the child's teacher to make sure this doesn't affect their schoolwork in their current classroom, and to make sure parents are also aware of what is happening before this takes place. So we're going to look at the data that we got from the first week of pre-assessments and really start to hone in on where that child is academically, but also where they are socially and emotionally, and how we can create interventions and steps to see if this child is eligible or ready for acceleration. During week 3 will be a lot of observation. So the observation will be coming in, looking at the social, emotional, how many interactions are taking place, but also with exit tickets. Exit tickets are really important, and they show key knowledge and really targeted skill sets. So I plan on using those to help with my observations and to help gather my data throughout this course to see how the child's progressing based off of that baseline of the first assessment and then the baseline of the second assessments. Week 4 will bring our post-assessment. So those post-assessments will be the same assessments that I gave in week 1, and we will see what the change is in the child's ability. I will look at how the student adjusted to the classroom emotionally and socially as well. Have they interacted more with the peers since they are with them more often? Are they withdrawn? Do they feel comfortable? I'll also be doing interviews with that child and with classmates to see how well they believe that child fits in or how that child feels that they fit in. And then we will be determining how well the interventions work during this time. During week 5, I plan to analyze and present the data. During the final week, I will analyze and present the data visually in a line graph and a bar graph to demonstrate their growth and ability to engage, as well as their growth during the course based on the standards and skills that were targeted. This is an example of the pre-assessment I've chosen to use. It's a student observation form, which shows the time that I observed the student. Time is very important because different times we can have different behaviors. We know if we observe a student right after lunch, we may not get as much enthusiasm from that child as when we observe them maybe right after recess or at the very beginning of the day. We can also target areas of concern that need referrals. So can I see that this child is having issues with behavior or they're having issues with their social skills? I can immediately make note of that and see where I can help that child out. We have levels of activities, their attention, their effort and motivation, their relationship with their peers, and all of those will be observations that I plan on doing daily and taking notes and having these data points ready to plot each day so we can see that true growth over this short period of time. This is an example of a pre-assessment that I have given to a student in 4th grade when testing to see if they were ready to accelerate during a specific time of day. This is just a pre-assessment and post-assessment of what the skills may look like based on their levels. This is below on grade level and above grade level testing. Assessing these scores across the board is vital to determine whether or not the student fully grasped that concept. While each skill builds upon each other, the skills start out easy and gradually become more advanced. So we can see that the student might have a knowledge of question 13, but not a knowledge of question 15. So we can really look at what they did. And every assessment can be modified, obviously, for what the student needs. So if we're not testing on algebraic thinking during this time period, then we wouldn't give an assessment on algebraic thinking. We're going to give an assessment based on what the student needs during this time period. During the pre-test and the post-test, your numbers may change. You're definitely able to input different numbers in order to get an idea of whether or not the student has fully understood and recognized the skill set, or you're able to leave the numbers exactly how they are. This is very much up to you on how you choose to do this. I plan on changing the numbers because I want to make sure the student has a full understanding and grasp of the skill, not just rote memory of what was taught during this time. So the interventions I plan to use are RTI. RTI is a way of gathering information by the teacher, but also fixing any misconceptions that may be had by the student. Students can easily work in small groups of 4 to 6 and share their thoughts and ideas openly. Teachers need to take running record of what students are learning and mastering in order to show interventions are either working or not. Exit tickets are used to assess students quickly and target specific skills. Students are able to show everything they know about one particular skill, and teachers can take that data in order to understand their student thinking, but also arrange groups and learning patterns. We'll also be using peer collaboration. Peer collaboration allows students to discuss and share ideas freely in their own words. Students may learn new strategies or a new way to think when they have these conversations with their peers. This can be an interesting way for teachers to walk around the room, making notes and observations in order to understand what children are truly thinking and how the child is fitting in with peers of a different age. Observations in weekly meetings will address all concerns that arise throughout the week. This is also a time to check with the student's teacher to determine whether or not acceleration is working. whether the parents have concerns, or if there needs to be any changes made to the schedule. In order to maintain accurate data and consistency, the same assessment needs to be given at the beginning and end of a unit. The same skill needs to be tested, and the same observation checklist needs to be used in order to accurately account for the child's growth during that time period. This can be a good indication if a child is not socially adjusted. This may mean they might not academically adjust either. During the assessment, you are able to give the same test again or change the numbers, as I mentioned previously, or words when it comes to a literacy test, in order to maintain that the skill was learned and not just memorized. Analysis methods that will be used are observations. Observations are a way for teachers to quickly assess students using checklists and general notes. These can be quick and easily documented and are ways to reflect on previous learning and how the child progresses through their ability in a specific unit of study. Exit tickets are wonderful resources as they show quickly whether a child is understanding the specific skill that is being taught. The exit ticket is highly focused on one skill and can provide information about misconceptions or show that a child has complete understanding of a topic. Peer discussion. Peer discussion allows children to share ideas and insights in an informal manner. Students are able to discuss why they understand and why they do not understand a problem, and then they can discuss and explain information to each other. This is important for new ideas to be shared by the students and misconceptions to be heard and managed by the teacher. Grouping. This allows teachers to group students in different groups based on their ability but also on personality. Students that grasp a concept may be grouped in with children that do not fully grasp a concept. Teachers may also choose to group two highly opinionated students together in order for them to learn and share ideas and the speaking floor with one another. Grouping is done intentionally, and most of the time is based off of exit tickets, observations, or other assessments that take place in the classroom. Data collection is all-encompassing of the above-mentioned methods. During this time, I will be collecting data while I observe in peer discussion, the group, and in general classroom observations. I will also be collecting data when we have formal and summative assessments, such as exit tickets. This is an example of a line graph that I plan on using during my research. The line graph will be updated daily to show graph points of interactions each day as the child interacts with their peers. This chart will help us determine whether or not interaction and academic success are interrelated. So you can see I broke this down as weekly interactions, but we'll see a more detailed line plot as we break this down into daily interactions. This bar graph will be updated weekly. As you can see, it's color coordinated and shows the different standard categories that the child will be tested on based off of the grade appropriate standards. Each week, the child will be given an assessment, such as an exit ticket, that will help to show whether or not they understand the concept of a particular standard family based on the learning targets that are set forth in this classroom. So a child may be given a algebraic thinking, and we can see that each week their learning grows, but during week 3 something happens and they regress a little bit. This can be an area of concern, and we can choose to go in and check and see where is this misconception happening and how can we help to resolve the issue. This is a quick look at the bibliography that I had for this presentation. I appreciate your time and attention. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.